in Austin, and then so he actually worked for my dad for a while, but then he wanted to be a lawyer, so we went to Texas Tech, and he became a lawyer. But he grew up on the border. He spoke total Spanish. But you know, it's when you've got the kids growing up, you just speak English mostly. So
Okay.
I forgot the question.
Okay. Describe what you learned as a child about how women ought to relate to men.
Okay, that's a good one, because my mother was powerful in her own way, but she was very, I don't know that I would say subservient to my dad, but growing up, I was probably grew up knowing that the men in the family were a little more important than the women. My brothers usually got to do pretty much what they wanted to do. I was more sheltered. I didn't have the freedoms that my brothers did. So there was a big double standard in my family with the men and the women, I thought. And then we usually catered to my dad a lot. But he wasn't spoiled or anything like that. It was just something that was just, we waited for him to get home before we sat down to eat. We would never sit down to eat unless my dad was there, unless if he was running late because he worked late at the drugstore, he had to close the drugstore. We wouldn't sit down to eat. I don't care if we were hungry, but if he was coming at 7 o'clock, we waited. I mean, it was a lot. I grew up in a family that was very correct about a lot of things. My mother was very correct about everything. I mean, she spoke very softly. She would always tell me I talk too much and I talk too loud, and I still do. And so, but this was my mother, and she would just say, don't serve a lot of things on your plate. Always serve just small servings. But she never said it to my brothers. This is the kind of house I grew up in. It was like the women, and you know, you have to be very feminine. One time I was somewhere, we were at a restaurant, and I was with my mother, and I ordered a beer, and they brought it to me in the bottle, and I'll never forget this. That's why I cannot drink a beer out of a bottle. She said, you never drink a beer out of a bottle. You have to pour it in a glass. And I just went, okay. So I will go to a restaurant, I'll order a beer, and I'll say, be sure you bring me a glass. You know, if I just, sometimes they just want to bring you a bottle. No, I can't do that because my mother's voice is in here. You are a woman, a girl, you do never, it looks horrible for a girl to be drinking a beer out of a bottle. I mean, that's just like low class. So this is the house I grew up in. She was very correct about a lot of things. In the morning, she always had a full table set in the morning, like going to school. And you know, we were little. She always had. I mean, we had napkins. She never used paper plates. Everything was formal. To give you an idea of the house I grew up in, this was my mother, and so she was very correct about everything. So I have a lot of that in me, but probably 50% of it. I mean, you know, she was fully dressed in the morning for breakfast. It was kind of like, I mean, you could take her picture. I mean, she was like 6 o'clock in the morning after she said her prayers. And then she was fully dressed. That's why I always used to tell her she would have been a great nun. And when I had dates in high school, I'd go out, you know, and go out in high school. She would meet me at the door with the rosary. She would be praying the rosary till I got home. My mother, yes, to be sure that I got home and I behaved myself on my date or whatever. She would greet me with a rosary. She'd been praying the rosary till I get home. And I used to say, Mother, you really need to go to a convent. I would tell her because I had that little teenage attitude, you know. But she was a good mother. I mean, really. So we all turned out real good. So what can I say? You know.
What would you say have been some of the obstacles you have encountered as a woman?
Gosh, as a woman. Well, I didn't ever have a career. I worked in different jobs, and usually in the mental health field. I worked in state hospitals. I worked as a social worker, and so a lot of those jobs, I've taught school. A lot of those jobs, so I can't relate that I didn't advance because I was a woman. Like if I'd been in the corporate world, I wasn't. I was in the type of work where there was a lot of women. So I don't think I was ever denied a promotion or denied anything because of being a woman. So I can't go with that. You know, I've always been outspoken, and I feel like I've been able to hold my own. So I don't ever, if I ever felt that I was being denied something because of my gender, because I was a woman, I guess I'd speak up about it. But I just never really, But I've always felt my most important role was being a mother with my kids. Probably that's what was instilled from my mother growing up, and a career was never on my radar to necessarily have a career. So probably that held me back. It was probably my upbringing. Women's places in the home and supportive, and your children, and so I have a lot of that, and I believe that's very important. But I think in some ways maybe that held me back to it. I never did really want to pursue like a career. I worked, but it was always like part-time, other than when I taught school. And I worked full-time when my husband was in law school. But once I started having kids, and I had them pretty close together, I pretty much stayed home a lot and worked part-time here and there as a social worker. So I don't know that I necessarily feel held back as a woman. I see that women are held back a lot. I see it in the community. I see it in political life. You can just look at most boards that have any power at all in the corporate world, and they're full of men. But women are making inroads slowly. We just got the right to vote in the 1920s, if you think about it, which is really sad. It's really sad when I think about that. We barely got the right to vote in the 1920s. Before that, we weren't even considered intelligent enough to vote. So that's pretty sad. So we have to keep kicking and screaming and fighting and all of that.
So, although you didn't ever really have an actual career, how would you define success?
I think success is inside of yourself. Really, you can sleep at night. You feel pretty good about what you've done and how you think, and you don't have a lot of regrets. You feel like you've done the best you can, and at the time, the decisions you made were what you needed to make for whatever reason. And so I don't really look back. I think you feel successful when you don't go through life feeling a lot of regrets over things. Because I think you make decisions at a time, and maybe it was the wrong decision later, but when you make a decision, you kind of weigh the consequences, and you sort of know things, and maybe the consequences were a little different in some way, or maybe they were better or whatever, but you make those decisions, and that's how I lead my life. I know I may make this decision this way, knowing that it may not be the totally right thing. I think life is very gray, to tell you the truth. I don't think life is black and white. I think there's a lot of gray in life, and so if you can live your life and know that, and don't hold yourself to you just do the best you can with the best knowledge you have in making decisions, and in living your life as best you can, and in treating people fairly, and not taking advantage of people, and not judging people. And I just try to live my life like that. I've tried to live my life like that. And so I define success as being able to sleep at night because I feel okay about my life and feel okay about myself and how I've treated people. The times that I haven't been able to sleep good, it's because I have probably felt that, I shouldn't have said that to that person, or, I don't know. That's why I would be a lousy person in politics, because people would talk about you like they do about all the politicians constantly, and every single thing you've ever said, and everything is scrutinized. Oh, it'd be terrible. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. I'd be like, But I try to go through life without worrying too much and counting my blessings. Because everyone's life has drama. Everyone's life, you've made decisions that maybe you've regretted. Maybe you should have done this, maybe you should have done that, maybe you should have done that. You can't live like that. So that's how I define success, is being comfortable in my own skin, I guess, basically.
So what would you say makes you a successful woman?
I don't know that I am a successful woman. I mean, I think it's a very subjective. What you would consider a successful woman may be what I don't even consider a successful woman. You might consider a successful woman somebody that's made a lot of money. They're millionaires. They have homes all over the world. And they travel at the drop of the hat. They can just go wherever they want, and that's a successful woman. She can do all that. Yeah, I don't know. I consider a successful, myself is being respected by your children and your husband and your children, and trying to be a good role model and trying to be fair and trying to treat others as you want to be treated, and maybe being a good listener. Try not to be so judgmental about things, and don't discriminate. That really, really bugs me when people discriminate against other people, and they just want to wipe everybody with a big white brush, or they think they're so elitist and they're so better, and because they were born over here by the luck of the chance. You don't pick your parents. You don't know where you're going to be born and where you're going to come into the world. And I just can't stand all the immigrant bashing. I can't stand it. I can't stand all that stuff. It just bothers me how people talk about other people and treat other people. I don't know. So, I rambled on.
It's okay. So, what role did religion play for you in your own I know you said you don't really have a definition of what yourself like that.
It played a role because I lived it. That's all I've lived. I didn't live in any other religion but the religion I was born into. I have no desire to go into another religion, find another religion, or anything like that. I use the religion I have, I use it to benefit, how I can benefit from it. Mm-hmm. And I discard the parts that bother me and that I don't agree with. I just ignore it. And I don't, I don't think I'm going to be judged, if we get judged like that, like Judgment Day and all, that's all just so corny, but did you follow every single rule in the Catholic Church? Did you believe all the teachings of the Catholic Church? No, because there's so many different religions, so many different faiths, and I can really think about, I don't know, when I start thinking of religion, I go call it nutty, because I start thinking that there probably are lots of prophets all over that were